Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe, Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladev, Jaya Subhadra, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. जय जय श्री राधा गिरिधारी भगवान की जय, जय जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मैया की जय, जय गौर निताई की जय, जय श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय, जय गुरु महाराज की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, श्री नाम हरि संकीर्तन की jai. All glories to the symbol devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the symbol devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the symbol devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So once again, Hare Krishna, everyone. And today we will continue to read from Canto 4. So as per tradition, before we get to today's verse, I will read a few verses, verses from Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita. So please just bear with me. I will share my screen. Can I please confirm that you can see my screen?
Not yet.
Pretty good.
Oh yeah, now good. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm just confirming I'm reading from here. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnanan Jana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitamena Tasmai Shri Guru Vainama. So we are reading from chapter 22, Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, and the title of the chapter is Swami Invites the Hippies. So Srila Prabhupada knew he would not compromise himself. He would go, chant, and then leave. The important thing was to spread the chanting of Hare Krishna. If thousands of young people gathering to hear rock music could be engaged in hearing and chanting the names of God, then what was the harm? As a preacher, Srila Prabhupada was prepared to go anywhere to spread Krishna consciousness. Since chanting Hare Krishna was absolute, one who heard or chanted the names of Krishna, anyone, anywhere, in any condition, could be saved from falling to the lower species in the next life. These young hippies wanted something spiritual, but they had no direction. They were confused. They were confused, accepting hallucinations as spiritual visions, but they were seeking genuine spiritual life, just like many of the young people on the Lower East Side. Prabhupada decided he would go there. His disciples wanted him to, and he was their servant and the servant of Lord Chaitanya. Mukunda, Sam, and Harvey Cohen had already met with rock entrepreneur Chent Helms, who had agreed that they could use his Avalon ballroom and that if they could get the bands to come, everything above the cost for the groups, the security, and a few other basics would go as profit for the San Francisco Radha Krishna Temple. Mukunda and Sam had then gone calling on the music groups, most of whom lived in the Bay Area. And one after another, the exciting new San Francisco rock bands, the Grateful Dead, Moby Grape, Big Brother, and the holding company, Jefferson Airplane Quicksilver Messenger Service, had agreed to appear with Swami Bhaktivedanta for the minimum wage of $250 per group. And Allen Ginsberg had agreed. The lineup was complete. In San Francisco, every rock concert had an art poster, many of them designed by the psychedelic artist called Mouse. One thing about Mouse's posters was that it was difficult to tell whether the letters left off, where the letters left off and the background began. He used dissonant colors that made his posters seem to flash on and off. Borrowing from this tradition, Harvey Cohen had created a unique poster, Krishna Consciousness Comes West, using red and blue concentric circles and a candid photo of Swamiji smiling in Tompkins Square Park. The devotees put the posters up all over town. So, shall I stop here or shall I continue, Prabhuji? I'll probably just read one more. Hayagriva and Mukunda went to discuss the program for the mantra rock dance with Helen Ginsberg. Alan was already well known as an advocate of the Hare Krishna mantra. In fact, acquaintances would often greet him with Hare Krishna when he walked on Haight Street, and he was known to visit and recommend that others visit Radha Krishna Temple. Hayagriva, whose full beard and long hair rivaled Alan's, was concerned about the melody Alan would use when he chanted with Swami. I think the melody you use, Harigriva said, is too difficult for good chanting. Maybe, Alan admitted, but that's the melody I first heard in India. A wonderful lady saint was chanting it. I'm quite accustomed to it, and it's the only one I can sing convincingly. So I'll stop there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai. Now I will just share my screen again. So once again, just confirming everyone can see my screen.
Yes, Mataji, we can. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay, Hare Krishna. So once again, Hare Krishna, everyone. For those who have just joined now, please accept my humble obeisances. And so today we will continue to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4. The title of the canto is The Creation of the Fourth Order. And we are discussing chapter 28. Title of the chapter is King Puranjana Becomes a Woman. And today we are covering verse 64. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanaya Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नश्च प्रयासु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति युक्तं श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिके। शृण्वतं स्वाकथा कृष्ण पुण्यशर्वण कीर्तना हृदयन्तस्तु हि अभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सताम्. So today's verse. So एवं सा मानसो हंसो हंसेना प्रतिबोधिता स्वास्थस्तद्याभिचरेण नष्टम अपि पुनः स्मृतिम्। एवं सा मानसो हंसो हंसेना प्रतिबोधिता स्वास्थस्तद्याभिचरेण नष्टम अपि पुनः स्मृतिम्। एवं सा मानसो हंसो हंसेना प्रतिबोधिता स्वास्थस्तद्व्याभिचरेण नष्टम अपि पुनः स्मृतिम्. Would anyone else like to chant?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Evam sa manaso hamsa hamsena pratibodhita shastastvad vavicharena nashtam apapuna smritim. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mataji. Evam samanaso hamso hamsena pratibodhitah swasastad vyabhicharena nashtam apa punah smritim. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. I am also trying.
Thank you, Mataji.
एवं स मनुष्य हंसेन प्रतिबोधितः स्वस्थस्तद्व्यभिचारेण नष्टाम् अपपुनः स्मृतिम्. हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Evam samanaso hamso hamsena pratibodhitaha swasthastatvya vicharena nastamapo punah smritim. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll move to the synonyms. Would anyone like to read through the synonyms?
Yes, I can read Mataji.
Thank you.
Evam das sahi, the individual soul. Manasya, living together within the heart. Hamsa, like the swan. Hamsena, with other swan. Pratibodhitaha, being instructed. Sasthaha, situated in self-realization. Tat vabhicharena, by being separated from the super soul. Nashtim, which was lost. Apa, gained. Punah, again. Smritim, real memory. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Would anyone like to read the translation? Oh, you did read it.
May I, Mataji?
Yeah, go ahead, Mataji.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This way, both swans live together in the heart. When the one swan is instructed by the other, he is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of his material attraction.
Material attraction.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mataji. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide, which has the purport. Would anyone care to read the purport?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Here it is clearly stated, Hamsho Hamsena Pratibodhita. The individual soul and the super soul are both compared to swans, Hamsha, because they are white and uncontaminated. One swan, however, is superior, is the instructor of the others. When the inferior swan is separated from the other swan, is attracted to material enjoyment, This is the cause of his fall down. When he hears the instruction of the other swan, he understands his real position and is again revived to his original consciousness. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna comes down, avatar, to deliver his devotees and kills the demon. He also gives sublime instruction in the form of Bhagavad Gita. The individual soul has to understand his position by the grace of the Lord and his spiritual master, because the text of Bhagavad Gita cannot be understood simply by academic qualifications. One has to learn Bhagavad Gita from a realized soul. Tad viddhi pratipatena viprashnena shevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanastad darshena. Just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Bhagavad Gita 4.34. Thus one has to select a bona fide spiritual master and become enlightened to his original consciousness. In this way, the individual soul can understand that he is always subordinate to the super soul. As soon as he declines to remain subordinate and tries to become an enjoyer, he begins his material conditioning. When he abandons the spirit of being an individual owner or enjoyer, he becomes situated in the liberated state. The word Shasta means situated in one's original position, is very significant in this verse. When one gives up his unwanted attitude of superiority, he becomes situated in his original position. The word Tad Avicharena is also significant, for it indicates that when one is separated from God due to disobedience, his real sense is lost. Again, by the grace of Krishna and Guru, he can be properly situated in his liberated position. These verses are spoken by Srila Narad Muni, and his purpose in speaking them is to revive our consciousness. Although the living entity and the super soul are one in equality, the individual soul has to pursue the instruction of the super soul, and this is the state of liberation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. So in this way, we come to today's verse. But before we discuss today's verse, I just wanted to very briefly cover the background and context. So far in in this chapter, we have seen that King Puranjana in the body of Vaidarbhi, he has the good fortune of having very, very close association with a pure devotee, King Maladwaja, whom she has married. Now, figuratively, we understand that Narad Muni is not preaching to King Prajanabharishit, but to us. So far, once again, in this part of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have seen how a householder's life should be. So both the husband and wife have a common goal to serve the Supreme Lord, and they do this throughout their grasta life. But because in the early stages, there are some challenges in the form of responsibilities towards children, etc., they attend to all that while still keeping the end in mind. So Krishna is always in the center. And then after a period of time, when the children are grown up, they let them go, and their primary focus becomes preparing themselves to go back to Krishna. So in this way, we see that after performing his household duties, King Malayadwaj, he goes to the forest. Now, what happens next is that Queen Vaidarbhi voluntarily follows her husband to serve him. Now, we also see in the forest, the king, he performs severe austerities, and in this way, he attains love of Godhead. So, and he attains that through worshipping the Lord and performing severe austerities. So, Srila Prabhupada, he explains in verse 41, that there are two ways that Krishna instructs a person. One is directly to pure devotees. So Krishna directly instructs pure devotees, and then through a spiritual master, the instructions come to practicing devotees. So we also learn from Narad Muni that in verse 43 of the great benediction that a wife gets through her association with a pure devotee as a husband, and that of a disciple. So each is able to attain perfection through two things, association and service. The wife, by being a chaste wife and through serving her husband, achieves the same destination as her husband. And likewise, similarly, a disciple through his humility and service gains the same destination as his guru. So then we see that in the final section of this chapter, King Malaydwaj, he leaves his body. The queen, she laments, as is the natural thing to do, and then she prepares to take sati. So, and just when she's doing that, Krishna, in his feature as Super Soul, appears in the form of a Brahmana to remind her of who she actually is. Now, Krishna, in the form of an old Brahmana, is giving her self-realization. And simultaneously, we see that Narad Muni, he is preaching to King Parichanabharishit and to us. So in this way, we come to today's verse. So in the next slide, we see that, if we just go through, I'll read through the translation again. Translation goes as follows. In this way, both swans live together in the heart. When one swan is instructed by the other, he is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of material attraction. Now, in an earlier verse, I think it was verse 54, that verse also speaks of the super soul and the soul, both as swans. And so it says that, my dear friend, gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same heart, which is just like the Manasa lake. And although we have been living together for many thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. So I was just thinking that, what is the significance of verse 54 if we compare that to today's verse? So verse 54 shows the situation of the soul when he's not hearing the instructions of the other swan. So it's too busy eating the fruits of the tree rather than trying to understand who am I and what is the goal of my life. So Athato Brahma Jignasa. So in terms of today's verse, what we will be looking at, there are a number of key points that Srila beautifully makes out in the purport. So we will be covering first, who are we? What is the role of the spiritual master? What is the importance of being subordinate? And what are potentially some pitfalls that could deviate us from remaining subordinate? So we'll be looking at all of that today. And but just before that, I'll just say that Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruvaya Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So those are the 3 points that we'll be looking at today. And then we look at the first point. We'll be covering who we are. So as we understand that in a previously in Bhagavad Gita 15.7, in the first part of the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about our original identity. And that is explained very well in Bhagavad Gita 15.7, where Krishna says that we are part and parcel of Krishna. That is that in quality, we are the same as Krishna. And, Srila Prabhupada, he uses the examples of swans as comparison. So both the jiva and the super soul are compared to swans, meaning that we are both white and uncontaminated. Now, we already, I'm sure everyone in the forum, we already know the differences between ourselves and the individual soul and the super soul. We know that one is Anu, a small part of the whole, other, which is the whole. So we also understand that, like, if we compare super soul as being the body of water, then we are a small particle. We are a small drop of water. So constitutionally exactly the same, but different in quantity. Now, we also know another key difference between ourselves and the super soul is that we are fallible. And of course, there are other differences as well. The soul is the knower of its body, whereas the super soul is the knower of all bodies. So like this, there are a lot of differences, but the key point is that constitutionally, we are the same. So from this verse, we definitely understand that we become fallible. We fall from our position when we become attracted to material nature. Now, we know this happens as a result of our minute free will, whereby instead of wanting to be with Krishna and serving him, we choose to leave Krishna and want to be enjoyers ourselves. Thus, we fall from our original position. So that is our identity, who we are. Now, why does the material world exist? So in 1969 in Boston, a guest asked Srila Prabhupada, why does the material world exist? Now, Srila Prabhupada would have been giving a lecture where he talks about the material world is full of miseries and so on and so forth. In every step, there's danger. So the guest asked Srila Prabhupada, then, why does this material world exist in the first place? Srila Prabhupada answers as follows. He said, why do clouds exist? Right? He then elaborates that the cloud exists because of the need for rain. So likewise, the material world exists to allow living entities an opportunity to revive their original position and to return back to the permanent realm. Srila Prabhupada explains, just as cloud exists because of rain, which is required for vegetation, in due course, there is no need for vegetation. So there will be no need for rain, or for that matter, there will be no need for clouds. But the sky remains. So likewise, in due course, when the living entities regain their original position and return to the spiritual world, then there will be no need for the material world. And the only existence will be in the spiritual world. Now, the problem that we have is that unfortunately, not everyone is keen to go to the spiritual world. And as a result of that, Krishna, as our loving Father, he is so merciful. He continues to create, maintain, and annihilate the material world. And as we all know that as Super Soul, he takes this journey with each jiva. So, all the different types of bodies that we have taken throughout our journey, Krishna is always with us. So in the next slide, we look at, really understanding why we fell. Now, as we understand from this verse, we fell because of the misuse of our free will. And so we turned our face away from Krishna. We saw Krishna's external energy. Now, the jiva is superior to Krishna's external energy. So when we faced material energy, we immediately thought of how we can lord over in the inferior energy. And thus, depending on the extent of our desire over material energy, our subtle body was created and we came to be in the material world. This is very, very nicely explained in a class that His Holiness Bhaktacharya Maharaj gave. And there was this question asked, exactly how we came to be in this material world. Now, there's another analogy that really nicely explains this. And I know most of the time in my preaching, if it's if I use this analogy, it appears it's a lot easier to get the message across. So the analogy is that of a mother and a small daughter. So the mother is the controller in the kitchen, and the small child wants to do the same. However, so the child wants to do the cooking, cleaning, everything. But the mother says to the child, no, this is not for you. You just stay with me, watch me, help me. But what does the child do? The child in ignorance doesn't want that. So what does the mother do? Does she hand things over? No, she knows that is not for. The child is always dependent on the mother. So, giving the controlling power is not going to benefit the child. So she goes and she buys a beautiful pink kitchen for the child and gives it to the child. And, the child is happy and content, and she gets engrossed in the make-believe cooking, cleaning, serving, etc. Now, she feels that she is independent and free, but as we know, she's not. So the child is always dependent on the mother, whether she knows this or not. The mother, however, does not forget the child. So even though the child is engrossed in her playing, she does not leave the child and watches closely nearby, waiting for the child to get back to her when she's done with her playing. And after playing, because there's no real taste in the game, hence no real happiness, the game exists, it's real, but at the same time, it's all an illusion because it's make-believe. So the child, after tired and frustrated, comes back to the mother who takes the child back in her arms. So the mother is like Krishna, who loves us enough to let us go, and even creates the material world, which is a pretty pink kitchen, facilitating our desire to be enjoyers. But His love for us is so great that He is always with us, stays by our side. So, as I was saying, that the pretty pink kitchen is the material world which Krishna makes for us to become enjoyers. Of course, the idea is for us not to make this place our permanent home. So there's suffering, and the suffering such as birth, death, disease, and old age. It continuously reminds us that this is not the place to be. And then we all know that there are the three types of kleshas. We've got the suffering from our minds, from other living entities, and so in this way, we become frustrated, and then the idea is that we become frustrated and realize we need to go back. So just like the mother keeps checking on the child, so does Krishna. So the idea is, are you done playing, my child? Come back to me. Now, sometimes the mother, just to remind the child, sends an older sibling to check, and to remind the child to come and eat and do this and that. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport of the next verse, and he says as follows. Before I move to that, the other point to remember is that the mercy of Krishna to the jiva is that he's accompanying us in this journey, and Krishna is more anxious to have us with him than us wanting to go back. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains. Would anyone like to read this slide? It's taken from the purport.
Yes, Mataji.
Go ahead.
Srila Prabhupada explains the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna comes down avatara to deliver his devotees and kill the demons. He also gives his sublime instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita. The individual soul has to understand his position by the grace of the Lord and the spiritual master, because the text of Bhagavad Gita cannot be understood simply by academic qualifications. One has to learn Bhagavad Gita from a realized soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. So, when we, the Jivas, hear the instructions of Krishna through Guru and Sadhus, in other words, from realized souls, then we come to our senses and we realize we are not this body, that this game of birth, death, disease, and old age, the game of chewing the chewed, right? So we then realize I don't want to play this game anymore, and thus the process of each one of us going back to Krishna starts. So this is brings us to the second point that Srila Prabhupada is making. So the first point is, who we are, why does the material world exist, and why what it is that we are doing here. The next point, so the second key point that Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport is that without the mercy of Guru, we would not be able to make it out of this material world on our own. And to get the mercy of Guru, we need to follow the instructions given by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 4.34. That verse, Tad Vidhi Pranipatena, there are two key things in that verse. The first one is we need to take a humble position. And secondly, we need to render service to the Guru, thus earning the right to get his mercy. Now, when it comes to the role of Guru, there are two realizations that I wanted to speak of. The first is that Guru shows us how merciful Krishna is, and secondly, how far Krishna's love for us extends. Now, there's this beautiful poem that depicts just how much Krishna loves us and the extent of his love, which can only be made known to us through the mercy of Guru. So I'll just read that poem. I found this, as you do, just sharing a little bit of personal background to this poem here. We reach a certain age, we start decluttering. And so I was getting rid of a whole lot of my things from the past. And I found this poem that was gifted to me by one of my school friends when we separated ways. And she was from a Christian background. But each time I read, the poem didn't make a lot of sense to me then, but when I read through it, I just thought, wow, this is so powerful. And it really relates on how Krishna loves us and loves us so much. So the poem, I'm not sure if everyone's ever read it before, but it reads like this. It was written in 1939, so it's quite an old piece of work, but it has really, it's very powerful, and it's quite famous. So it goes as follows, that one night I dreamed I was walking along the beach with the Lord. Now, many scenes from my life flashed across the sky. Now, in each scene, I noticed footprints in the sand. Sometimes there were two sets of footprints, other times there were just one set of footprints. This bothered me because I noticed that during the low periods of my life, when I was suffering from anguish, sorrow, or defeat, I could see only one set of footprints. So I said to the Lord, Lord, you promised me that if I followed you, you would walk with me always. But I have noticed that during the most trying periods of my life, there have only been one set of footprints in the sand. Why, when I needed you most, you will not have been there for me? The Lord replied, my dear child, I never leave you. I never left you. I never will. The times when you have seen one set of footprints, this is when I carried you. So, that's just really wonderful. So, this poem tells us Krishna's love for us. It's nicely depicted in this poem of prayer. As a practicing devotee, many times I don't understand Krishna's love for me. And, I don't have access to Krishna directly. I don't even know whether I'll ever be able to dream about Krishna coming directly to me in a dream. But my spiritual master understands Krishna perfectly. Now, in verse 40 of this chapter, Srila Prabhupada explains that Krishna instructs pure devotees from within. We also know from Guru Ashtakam that the pure devotees, they're not ordinary Jews. They actually come from the spiritual world. They are assisting the gopis, right? They are assisting the gopis to recruit eligible candidates and to take them back. Who are the eligible candidates? Those who care to listen, those who have accumulated mercy by having come across pure devotees. So for me to understand Krishna's love, for ordinary jivas like myself, I can only understand this through a guru's mercy. Also, the scriptures tell us time and again that as jivas, we need guru, because as conditioned souls, we are tied up in the shackles of the three modes of material nature. So one who is tied needs the help of someone who is not tied up. Hence, the role of guru is key in untying us. So another example is, say, if we try to understand Shastras ourselves because we think it's all in the books and I can read it and understand it, and so therefore I can make it on my own, the answer is no, we can't. Just as one accepts a teacher, a lecturer to go through school and university, likewise we need guru to get proper understanding of scriptures. Exactly like in this poem where, immediately this person makes an assumption that, the Lord has left me during the most difficult parts of my life. So, to understand the proper meaning of Shastras, we can only get that from someone who has got the correct realization. Then I guess the last point in the slide is that even in the battle of Kurukshetra, Arjun first tried to understand the situation by himself, but what was the result? Total chaos. Now, a strong warrior like Arjun trembled like a leaf. He even refused to fight. Arjun was obviously put into the situation by Krishna to show us that, to understand his instructions, we do need guidance. Just as Arjun takes a humble position and accepts Krishna as his guru, so likewise we need to accept a guru. And not just Arjuna, Krishna himself accepted a guru. Lord Ram, he accepted a guru. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted a guru, right? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, they don't need gurus, but they are just showing us through the example that there is a need. Even all our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, respective spiritual masters, they have all accepted a spiritual master, so that jivas like ourselves, we understand that we do need someone to untie us. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 3.21 that as great men performs, common men follow, and whatever standards they set by exemplary acts, all the world pursuers. So that was another realization. Next up, we look at how can I be serious enough to go back in this lifetime? So little hinges, they swing big doors. Or if we flip it around, big doors swing on little hinges. Now this phrase was put together in the early 20th century by William Clement Stone. He was an author and very famous motivational speaker. Again, one of my favorites when I was growing up. But what he meant by this phrase is that sometimes big things happen as a result of small events. Now, the author was obviously teaching people at large that little things like being thankful, being polite, they seem small. But if done with intentional intent, not just for the sake of doing it, then it builds character. And that character, when it's built, can be phenomenal in changing someone's life around. So how is this related to our spiritual practice? In a big way. Now, because one thing that we need to understand is that we are creatures of habit. And that means that for most of our lives, it is spent on autopilot. So once we know how to do something, it starts happening as a result of habit. So it's done on autopilot. So we do it not because it ought to be done. We just do it because it's a habit. We do it. And so when it comes to our sadhana, we have to be, remember, we're talking about how can I be serious enough about going back in this lifetime. So the point is that our sadhana will take us back. That's a guarantee. It's given by, it's coming through parampara. It's been given to us by our guru. So observing the instructions of the guru is what will take us back. And so what has guru given us on a daily basis is our sadhana. So what I need to be careful of is that I don't do that sadhana in autopilot. I need to be making sure that I understand on a daily basis what is the intentional intent behind my sadhana. I've got to always remember, why did I take initiation? What is the intent behind taking initiation? If it is because I've taken a vow and therefore it needs to be done, that's good, but it's not the best reason for doing it, as we will see in the next slide. So in the next slide, so first up, intentional intent equals remembering why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? So that is the whole point of little hinges swinging big doors. If we can only just always be conscious of why am I doing what I'm doing. Now, in Nectar of Instructions, Srila Rupa Goswami, he instructs us as follows. He says that the advancement of a devotee is dependent on one thing. Now, does anyone remember what that one thing is? For those of you who were in the Bhakti Shastri, same batch as myself, I think this was one of the exam questions.
Attitude.
Absolutely correct. The advancement of a devotee is dependent on his attitude. So I'll tell you, my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Radha Govind Goswami Maharaj, he repeats what his Guru Maharaj, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada says, that when we take initiation, we must become serious. My Maharaj even said to us when we went for our second initiation that you don't need to take initiation to go back to Godhead. Now, he said that because he asked us the question, why do you need initiation? And my response, as naive as I was to go back to Godhead. And he said, no, that won't take you back to Godhead. Chanting the holy name of the Lord without offenses, number one, and avoiding Vaishnava aprad, that will take you back to Godhead. So, you would say, Ranga Devi Dasi, you are contradicting yourself, because previously I've just spent a whole couple of slides talking about why it's essential to take a guru. The point that Maharaj was making is that when you take initiation, you are wanting to be very, very serious. You are taking the shelter, and you're taking a shelter of Srila Prabhupada, so that it speeds up the process. And it only works if I will put the effort. So going back to Godhead is all about two things. One, taking the shelter of Guru, because it is taking the shelter of a Guru that will allow us to create the mood of surrender, but it only works if I put in the effort. Now, I hope that makes sense, because if we look at it literally, like I said, it contradicts the previous slides. But just to be very, very clear, we need Guru to cultivate the mood of surrender. And to surrender means we put in the effort. So initiation. So basically what Maharaj was saying to us is initiation is not a tick box to go back to Godhead. God, as we know, Krishna helps those who help themselves. And so furthermore, just to add, there are two significant words in the purport of this verse that Srila Prabhupada stresses on. Does anyone know what those two words are? I have it on the next slide. Would anyone like to read? It's written in red.
The word Shastra, meaning situated in one's original position, is very significant in this verse. When one gives up his unwanted attitude of superiority, he becomes situated in his original position. The word Tad Vavicharena is also significant, for it indicates that when one is separated from God due to disobedience, his real sense is lost. Again, by the grace of Krishna and Guru, he can be properly situated in his liberated position.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Yes, so that's the two key words that Srila Prabhupada stresses on. Now, we understand that, why do we reject guidance given by superiors, seniors, the Lord and spiritual master? The answer is that by nature, entities, those living entities that are conditioned, we are rebellious by nature, and that's why that's the whole reason why we're here in the first place. So naturally, we don't like to be subordinate to another person. It is the reason for us coming here in the first place. So we should understand this and take precautions and avoid being in a situation which may cause us to relapse in our spiritual life. Now, the scriptures also remind us that being subordinate or dependent on the super soul and spiritual master is our true nature. In a lot of lectures, Srila Prabhupada gives the example of a woman is always subordinate. So first to her parents, then to her husband, and when the husband leaves his body, she is dependent on her children. And in this way, as long as she is subordinate, there is no issue of her deviating from her duties. But there is a problem when she deviates from taking a subordinate position. So, of course, often it's highlighted that it does not mean that the protectors have the right to be exploitative. So, no, if we become subordinate to the spiritual master and to the super soul, they always take charge. And this is where our life then starts taking on a different meaning altogether. So this is key to understand that we must always be subordinate, and then there'll be a greater chance of going back to Krishna. Now, another point that Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport is that spiritual knowledge cannot be understood without the help of a realized soul. So academic qualifications is not good enough. So I guess the key realization for me here is that I should be serious about my intent to go back. My sadhana should not be done on autopilot. If I should always be aware of my intent. I took initiation to be serious, and am I serious about going back? And then if the answer is no, then I've got some work to do. And so this brings us to the last part of today's class, which is around the challenge. The challenge, coming into Krishna consciousness is half the battle. Now, the other half is remaining in Krishna consciousness. So, why is that a challenge? Because if we remind ourselves that as conditioned souls, we are rebellious by nature. So, there are some tips that to prevent fall down in our spiritual journey. So, remember, we are on our way to return, but then we are still undertaking this journey. So what will prevent us from relapsing? So there's a couple of things here, and again, this is it's just like stating the obvious. We already know this, so it gives us some pointers. And it's as simple as the revisiting the ABCD formula that really works well. I heard from a number of advanced devotees that the end of life for someone in Krishna consciousness is very, very sweet. The beginning is also good, because as soon as we come into Krishna consciousness, good things start to happen. The end, they say, is sweeter, but the middle can be very, very challenging. So I guess the key point that I need to remind myself all the time is that if I'm going through a bad patch, I've got to realize this, that abhi movie khatam nahi hui hai. Now, what I mean by that is the movie has not ended yet. So because we know what happens in all good Hindi movies, like they used to say, or at least that used to be the case, that the end is always good. So when we go through challenges, that's I tend to remind myself that it is not the end yet. The end is very, very sweet in Krishna consciousness, and if I can remember that and continue to be in Krishna consciousness, I will be able to get through. And that, for me, that's a key realization. So in terms of the 4 pointers here, association. Now, association is the key. Now, often we can say that association is the thing that can either make or break the deal of going back. it is said that we are safe in numbers. So, think about all the trips that you've taken as a group of devotees. Because you are with others, you are more likely to continue progressing in your spiritual life. Now, even if it means you have to put on a mask or grin and bear it because you don't get along well with certain people, that's fine. The important thing is that problems start when we are on our own, because that's the time when we start associating with the mind, and that's what we need to keep away from. The other thing about association is that, and this is something that my Guru Maharaj stresses quite a lot on, is that we should ensure that we are associating with a mixed group. So we should not be looking at associating just with our peers or disciples from the same Guru. We've got to mix with everyone, with obviously with all our spiritual masters. We are very, very fortunate to have a lot of gurus that have taken shelter from Srila Prabhupada. And, if we can just regularly associate with them whenever they visit, with our peers as well as with advanced devotees, because we can learn from everyone. Recently, I think last week in my homage offering to Guru Maharaj, I said something that I've heard him say a number of times, that it is actually an offense to a pure devotees if we segregate ourselves from disciples of his god brothers. So Maharaj doesn't like glorification, and he says that the Guru Tattva is very, very inclusive. So, if we only associate amongst our own God brothers and God sisters, what we are showing is that the air that we breathe is different from the air that everyone else is breathing, or it's compared to the moon that is shining on your doorstep is different to the moon that is shining in someone else's doorstep. So, he says that if we ever were to glorify him, he doesn't like glorification, but if we ever were, then there's two things that we always need to keep in mind. Is that firstly, we've got to glorify Srila Prabhupada. That's key, and we've got to glorify all his god brothers. So everyone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada needs to be glorified, if we ever think of glorifying Maharaj. Books, obviously. Second point is around books. Books are our gems. It is our real Kohinoor. So, but rather than keeping them safe, these jewels should be used, and we need to read them scrutinizingly and regularly. Then chanting, we obviously know that we've got to chant with intentional, understanding the intentional intent with the wine mind. I think C also goes for cultivating qualities like humility and tolerance, because that'll really helps us not relapse. And last but not least is our diet. So only to take Krishna Prasadam. In the next slide, we just cover, I know we're going probably a bit over time, to remain subordinate to Guru. One thing is very, very important, and that is we need to be very, very careful in our sadhana. So Srila Prabhupada was once asked by one of his disciples. He said, Prabhupada, you are not always present with us. You are always traveling. So how can we develop a personal relationship with you? Srila Prabhupada responded as follows. Are you chanting your rounds? Are you following the regulative principles nicely? He continued, if you are, then you are associating with me. And if you fail to do these two things nicely, then you will start feeling the need to strengthen your relationship with Guru. So in many occasions, Srila Prabhupada mentions the fall down in one's spiritual life happens as a result of a sadhaka becoming relaxed in their sadhana. So just to recap, in today's class, we looked at, why we are in the material world. The cause of our fall down is when we try to be controllers, we get attracted to the material nature, and our journey of chewing the chewed begins. Role of spiritual master, we looked at that. The spiritual master helps us get out of the material world. We need Guru, but we also need to put in our effort, our own efforts. We looked at a few things that could help us, help us avoid common pitfalls. And there was the ABCDs that we often visit. And then the theme of today's class, or today's verse, was all about understanding that to remain steadfast in our journey back to Krishna is largely dependent on one thing and one thing only, and that is to remain subordinate to Guru and the spiritual Lord. And in doing so, by the grace of Krishna and Guru, we will be able to make it back. So Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So I will stop here, and I'd like to open the floor and to get people to share their realizations, and please correct me if I have made any mistakes. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Such an interesting clarification of the text. You have ticked out everything what Prabhupada has given us as a gift for the conditioned soul like us. So you have touched upon almost everything. But the good point, the last thing, A, B, C, D, which is parallel to 3S, is the main source of all these texts. Everything depends upon all those 4 points and 3 points of S. When we maintain this, as Prabhupada said, I am not aloof from you. I am always with you if you chant properly and follow the 4 regulative principles. That is how it begins with and ends with the same way. There is no end actually. It is always with us. So to prepare ourselves for going back to Godhead, of course, is the ultimate goal, but the main purpose is to follow the things correctly and nicely, not in, as you said, autopilot mode. That what begins the start of fall down. So your examples, as you have given, the footprint is so nice. We often think, where is Krishna? But we don't realize Krishna lifted us to make journey with us. He himself comes with us, but we don't realize because our darkness of ignorance. So to understand that part in the real sense, we need all this A, B, C, D. So that gives us the clear picture, and Prabhupada's instruction will always help us to put in the right direction towards our end goal. And that is how this text is guiding us. And you have so nicely clarified. And the other things is the hinge, the door hinge. We can see the hinge is so small compared to the door, but the effort, bun bun mein sagar. So that is how it is. Everybody is helping us, but we don't realize that because we are just away from Krishna. So Krishna Shujjashama Maya Andaka. So once we just be away from Krishna, all this happens. We don't realize the impact that somebody is giving support always, but we don't realize because of our ignorance. And that ignorance can be cleared off if we follow A, B, C, D and 3S. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. You summarized very beautifully.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Very nice class, and all points are so important. But my takeaway point is that we have to be serious and we have to remember Krishna until death. Very nice. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you, Mataji. Okay, so
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Thank you for a very good analysis of this verse. You really unpacked it so nicely, so many details and so many nice takeaway points. I really appreciate this class of yours. Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So we'll end here. So Vancha Kalpatrabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo
Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Har Grace Ranga Devi Mataji ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gauthamanande Hare Hare Bol. All glories to assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Pranam Sadhguru.